I definitely discriminate against men that paint their nails and wear dresses. I don't really care how you feel about that. You can wear your dress and you can paint your nails, but I'd prefer you keeping 100 feet away from a playground and all of the feet away from my children and me. If I see you, I'm gonna cross the street if I'm with my kids. Oh, Candace, it's not accepting. We need to be more accepting of the people, the men who like to wear panties. I'm good. You can be more accepting of it. You run that risk when you see a guy who looks like a freak and you're with your children and say, to be accepting, I'm gonna put my kids next to him. I'm not going to be that person. I'm gonna go, that looks weird, and I'm gonna move away from it. It's that simple.
Candace Owens giving her thesis, her promotion of discrimination and bigotry, and why she involves herself and why she dives into that pool, specifically now about what she claims is men dressing, putting on dresses. We don't really know if this is someone that identifies as a woman or if this is someone that identifies as a man. Doesn't matter. She doesn't like it. And as a matter of fact, she even alluded to further things, is what she assumes folks that she doesn't like based off of her viewing them, what they might be doing at a playground. Let's let her continue.
And by the way, speaking of that sort of discrimination, literally any person, no matter how normal they look, if they are at the playground, when I take my kids and they're by themselves, I'm like, red flag, get my kid away from that. Why are you at the playground by yourself? There's no scenario where you should just be an adult at a playground by yourself, especially if you're a male. I suddenly have eyes on them and I'm watching them near the other kids. It just feels wrong. It's a healthy discrimination for me. I discriminate against doctors, dentists, trainers. I don't want a dentist with bad teeth. I don't want Lizzo being my trainer. If you want her to be your trainer, have her be your trainer. I am going to discriminate against somebody that is that clinically obese, saying that they're gonna get me healthy. I am good on that.
She's totally good on that. So again, by the way, there is a point we can agree to. Candace Owens and I agree. When I've seen adults at a playground by themselves with no children with them or no children coming to hang with them, no family members or friends there that are actual children that they're there for, that rings some alarm bells in my mind too, except it was general adults, which she did say there. So I'll give her that. As a matter of fact, there was at one point when I lived in Santa Monica, there was a playground on the same block that I lived on. And there was a sign that said, adults that aren't accompanying a children are not allowed to be here. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess there's a small point of agreement on us there, except she's only thinking about the folks that she deems lesser than her. In fact, she has more she has to say about how the reasons why she thinks that. As a matter of fact, it makes the world safer. Watch.
So all I was to say is obviously discrimination is built into us for a reason. It's a survival mechanism, right? We want to survive. And so when we get that feeling, my mother used to refer to it as the heebie-jeebies. When someone just gives you the heebie-jeebies, even if you can't quite put your finger on why, I think you need to lean into that. And I actually think that society would be safer if we discriminated more. What's happening now is insanity because they're telling us to accept everything.
I'm not sure if this was the plan to get the attention, or if not, to just not understand how this whole thing works. She continues to use the word discrimination because that's more incendiary. That'll bring more attention to this argument that she's got. Discrimination is the unjust biases towards people without any basis for why you hate someone or why you've separated yourself from it, why you crossed that street. If the dentist has bad teeth, you can think maybe he doesn't know how to work on teeth, or maybe he's not very well versed in this because of his own hygiene. That's a determination based off of someone's potential skill or their work in that field. This is blatant discrimination. Discrimination for a dentist would be like, I'm not gonna go to that black dentist because I don't think black people are smart enough to be dentists. There's a difference there. There's a discrimination that she continues to say, it's about because I looked at him and he's gotta be wearing panties. So that must be the problem. Really fast before we get to the reality behind this, which is why her discrimination, I'll prove to you, shows that it's based off of unjust biases and beliefs about people. Well, first, your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, this is typical grifter stuff. Candace Owens, while she's not very smart, she's not exactly an idiot. I think people on the right have identified the trans issue as a winning one for them. And so, this is something that she thinks she can harp on. I think she's made the calculation, people in her audience might be called quote unquote discriminatory for not being accepting of trans people. I think she's making a mistake though. The contempt which she holds for her audience, I think she thinks her audience is a lot more discriminatory in nature than people generally are. Yes, even white conservatives, right? And so I think she's overestimating how, racist, bigoted, conservative, her conservative audience is. And another thing that I think is quite telling, JR, is that whenever they do this trans hysteria thing, they don't have an example, right? Which just shows you like there's no trans people raping kids and abducting them from the park. Like we hear about stuff like quote unquote the Willie Horton ad, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, it was a political ad based on an actual convict who got out and did something messed up again. Believe me, if these people had a trans Willie Horton, they'd be saying that person's name every single day and saying, we don't want another such and such occurrence again. They would be invoking these incidences all the time. They never do. It's just conspiracy and ridiculousness, which shows you how baseless the accusation is.
Well, let's get into more of how the baseless this accusation is, or at least her discrimination. Again, the way that she described it, which normally could seem as a negative term, but these are the things that conservatives like to do. They like to give some life to negativity and claim that it's positive. One of those things being violence, political violence specifically. Here's some reality which shows why the discrimination that she's touting here is baseless. Here's some studies about child molesters and who they generally are. Science and case management experience has shown us that most child molesters are heterosexual. Abuse is about power and control and is not anchored by sexual orientation. Dr. Gene Abel, a researcher in the field of sexual violence for over 25 years, wrote an article for the Average Parent in Redbook magazine to take the knowledge he gained in doing over 100 scientific articles to provide specific warning signs for parents and caregivers. In that article, he explicitly states that most cases of boys being molested are attributed to heterosexuals. Most men who molest little boys are not gay. They continue on, only 21% of the child molesters we studied who assault little boys were exclusively homosexual. Nearly 80% of the men who molested little boys were heterosexual or bisexual, and most of these men were married and had children of their own. One small aside here, because she mentioned, I don't know if you're wearing panties again that she was talking about. I'm sure there's plenty of men that you've seen walking down the street wearing Levi's jeans, a collared shirt, and they just might have some panties on underneath. You don't know that. But you assume that about someone else because of the outer appearance that you see, or maybe when you speak to them, or maybe watch the way they walk or the way they speak. It's none of that actually makes much sense. But if you're talking about whether or not somebody's wearing a certain kind of underwear, you don't know that, and maybe that's your family. Maybe that's one of your best friends that never told you. Let's a little bit more about this, considering we're gonna expose the discrimination that she's talking about, she engages in. Dr. A. Nicholas Groth, researcher on adult male offenders and author of Men Who Rape, The Psychology of the Offender, states that it is a myth that adult males who molest boys are homosexual. He provides several clinical examples to back up his finding, including the connection that molesters see themselves in their victims, but would not be attracted to adult males. And lastly, they see the boy as a projected representation of themselves. They feel themselves to be more child than adult, more boys than men, and therefore find themselves more comfortable, especially sexually, in the company of children, which is the psychological part about the disgusting nature of child molesters. But they'll just lump on, if I see someone I don't like, that gives me, as she said, the heebie-jeebies. Let's have a policy based off of my heebie-jeebies. Let's have discriminatory policies and stripping of people's human rights based off of my heebie-jeebies. Some people get the heebie-jeebies from you, Candace. And in fact, people that look just like you in our history, they gave a lot of people the heebie-jeebies, and they were murdered, they were dismembered, they were lynched, they were dragged behind trucks, their children were taken. All these things happened because black folks gave folks the heebie-jeebies. Because someone else told them, those black folks, they're dumb, they're criminals, they're violent, they'll come after you, you better get them first, they're lesser than us. Sounds like we're doing the same thing here. You got last thoughts, Waz?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is terrible, disgusting rhetoric, but I think you kind of nailed it on the head with the idea that she thinks this will get her a lot of attention, and she believes her audience will get a kick out of it. This isn't somebody who's trying to win people to an argument, right? Like this isn't some intellectually rigorous segment she just put together there. She's just trying to get attention. She thinks her audience will enjoy this kind of crap.
I'm glad you said it that way. There's the point when people do stuff like this. The point is to spread the hate. If you have your general hate that you keep in your head and you walk around and you cross streets, it's fine, bro. That's fine with me. But why is it you feel the need to broadcast what your hate is? Because you want to spread it. You want people to believe the way you believe.